When I was a teenager, I thought that what I wanted to do with my future career was to make movies. I absolutely adored Indiana Jones and his wild adventures, I was enamored with Ripley's badassery in Aliens, and I must have seen Terminator 2, The Goonies, and Halloween 100 times by the time I graduated high school. Movies and photography have a lot of crossover. Lighting and composition, context and subject contrast, all play a huge part in both mediums, not to mention the ability to juggle a million logistics at once. And while I love movies and have worked on a few and made my own little shorts and behind the scenes of my own photo shoots, making a feature film or even a short film is really, really hard. I'm Robert Schultze and this is Light Meter, a podcast discussing the ideas and theories behind why pictures are the way they are. Today we're going to talk about my attempt at working on movies, motion, film, whatever you want to call it. I learned after a long time that while I like working with film and video, my strengths lie elsewhere. I still plan to work on my own projects, including goals to shoot a short film and a feature-length film, but ultimately, making even a simple narrative film is a monumental task. So for now, I'm going to talk about my own journey through working as a PA, camera assistant, and a cinematographer on low-budget films, as well as my own love for movies and films. I was born in the late 80s. The world was just at the tail end of beta, and more slick formats were becoming king, like Laserdisc and VHS. Some of the first movies I had seen and become obsessed with was Batman, Star Wars, The Goonies, Indiana Jones, stuff like that. Indiana Jones thrilled me with its heart-stopping action and wild stunts. Terminator 2 wowed me with its special effects. Star Wars with its vast storyline of cunning villains and space politics. My dad was really into monster and sci-fi movies from the 40s and 50s. Films like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Them, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and a couple of the Godzilla movies. It was a weekly ritual on Saturday nights. We would make popcorn or other snacks and watch the late-night movie host Ned the Dead dish out some cheesy jokes in between schlocky horror and sci-fi films. Eventually, we watched some more contemporary films. I remember the first time I saw Alien and how it made me feel claustrophobic. Jurassic Park filled me with wonder and began a dinosaur obsession. The John Carpenter films Halloween and The Thing constantly made me question if it was safe to turn off the lights before I dove into my bed under the blankets, hoping to avoid the ghastly creatures that were surely hiding under there. I begged my parents to get me a video camera for years, but being the 90s, VHS and mini cassette camcorders were still pretty pricey. I did eventually get to play around with some video cameras with friends, and we made a short horror film in the basement of my piano teacher's house in the half hour that my older sister had her piano lesson. I wanted to film this quote-unquote movie from the perspective of the monster like in the first Halloween movie, so me and my piano teacher's kids ran around in the basement howling at each other and strangling each other until my sister was done with her lesson. I learned right away that making any sort of narrative film is all about logistics, coordination, and patience. I knew the stories that I wanted to tell, but I was still learning how to tell them and was unaware of how the work that had to be done behind the camera would translate to the finished product in front of it. My family borrowed a camcorder from a cousin or something, and I made my grandpa film me rolling under the garage door and grabbing my hat from under it right before it closed, probably a dozen or so times. I ran through the forest clutching an idol like Indiana Jones as I crashed through hanging vines and branches, just like I had seen in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But just like the last time with my piano teacher's kids, I was disappointed that it didn't turn out how the way it looked in the movies. One of the films I appreciated that took advantage of his low-budget style and gonzo production was Sam Raimi's Evil Dead series. I first saw Evil Dead 2 at my 13th birthday party when my friends and I piled in front of a TV and watched it on full volume while drinking soda and eating chips. The DIY aspect of that film being made amongst friends with a shared vision is something that I strive for today. It was around that time that I discovered still photography. My mom was the designated photographic record keeper in the family. She had a 35mm camera with a zoom lens that every 2 weeks or so we would take to the Osco Drug and get the film developed. Photos of family gatherings, days at the river, farm animals, etc. I begged her to get me a still camera, and after not too long, I had my very own Vivitar fixed focal length 35mm camera. I started taking pictures of my action figures at low angles and close-ups and made them feel larger than life, much closer to what I imagined than I was capable of accomplishing with a video camera at that time. When I did eventually get a more modern-day video camera that used cassettes, I was pretty deep into still photography and other creative mediums. So as I got older and moved out on my own, I focused exclusively on that. When I went to college in the late 2000s, I traded in my Nokia brick phone for a more modern cell phone that had a camera built into it. I started taking little video clips and ultimately learned a lot from that playtime. To make money and learn more about the creative industries, I started working as an assistant and a PA on photo and video shoots, mostly short videos for company websites, explainers, tutorials, that sort of thing. I was doing everything from handling the slate to mic mic-ups to focus measurement and lighting with local video production companies. Canon and Nikon cameras were starting to have the ability to shoot HD video around this time, and my school started stocking the Canon 5D Mark II to borrow for video shoots. Some of my friends in school were film majors or directors, and I got to work on their short films as a camera operator on these borrowed cameras. During this time, I began to be much more interested in filmmaking and storytelling on a technical level, mostly from directors like Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter, and more. I started watching movies every day, oftentimes more than one. I began collecting VHS cassettes and laserdiscs because I loved the oversized artwork and the exaggerated designs of the boxes. Movie posters and cardboard cutouts became items I strived to own and collect. My vintage camera collection began to expand to movie cameras and 8mm film reels. I started coming up with simple stories I could tell and began making creative short films mostly for myself, but sometimes for school when assignments would allow the sort of thing. Mostly these were behind-the-scenes videos of a shoot I did for class. When a few friends of mine got married in 2014, they asked me if I would shoot their wedding video. At first, I said no, but after some time, I came back to them and said, okay, but you have to let me do whatever I want. Wedding videos sound like a pretty straightforward gig. You see a lot of the same type of coverage. Shots of the wedding party getting ready, shots of the ceremony, shots of the food, shots of the reception, and some B-roll in between. This is fine, but I really wanted to do something different. I was taking a film editing class at a time and was friends with another ambitious filmmaker, and we decided that the way to shoot my friend's wedding was to follow the wedding party 6 months before the ceremony, and then 6 months after the ceremony, and cover all the steps in between. And then we would compile all the footage to make a feature-length documentary that was worthy of Sundance. In concept, yes, this is a great idea. In practice, we were art school students with no money and even less experience with the logistics of how to handle all of the travel we would need to do, the technology required, and the emotional toll this would all take. We did manage to pull it off, and even today, I look fondly back on this, secure in my stance that it was an amazing experience, a fun time with good friends that I still keep in touch with today, and I never want to do it again. Even with all of the stress, logistics, and sleepless nights of working on that wedding, I would still be really happy to work on a narrative film. To me, there's just something about telling a story through not just a visual medium, but movies have always had a magical quality about them. The possibilities are endless. The well of human stories that can be told is bottomless. And when I dig through my piles of scripts and treatments written by me, my friends, or some other random tidbit I found on the internet, I can see the possibilities. And hopefully soon, at a theater, TV screen, or computer monitor near you, you'll see the words "directed by" above my name. Lightmeter is researched, hosted, and produced by me, Robert Schultze. It's also co-produced by Lauren Baines and recorded in San Jose, California. Did you enjoy this podcast? Let me know your thoughts and send an email to lightmeterpodcast@gmail.com. You can listen to us on anchor.com/lightmeter, and I'm on Facebook at Lightmeter Podcast, Twitter at LightmeterPC, YouTube at Lightmeter. I know, sorry, there's a lot of variation on the name, but if you search for Lightmeter and see our podcast logo, that's the one. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you next time.